Welcome back to the Unanimous Decision Podcast. I am your host, DPalm. Follow me on Twitter at DPalm66. Follow the show on Twitter at UDPod. Follow the entire MTR network at the MTR network. You found us, so lose us. Subscribe to the iTunes or subscribe anywhere you get your podcast for absolutely free. We're here. We're in the heart of it. Podcast week rolls on. Day 3, as we're rolling into now. You've already heard Chad Floyd and myself discuss the fortunes of Georgia football, which I'm not going to lie, got a little cocky a little quickly. Then we had Michael Felder on from Stadium. He talked about the large picture of Big Five power football. We had a really interesting conversation about NCAA football that if you like two football nerds talking about it, make sure you check that one out. And speaking of football nerds, today I am joined by my guest, my former left tackle. We played together at Columbia University. He's an all-Ivy performer with a huge asterisk, but he's one of my best friends, MBarso. What up, Barso? How you doing, man?
What's up, buddy? Good to be with you.
It's good to have you back because I know that there's at least one episode I'll get 2 more downloads on. Hi, Mr. and Mrs. Barsamian as well.
I'm no Susan, but, you know.
Hey, you know what? Who is?
On my own.
You put up with me because you had to. She chose this life. I don't know what's gotten into her.
It's not her fault. It's not her fault.
Very, very good point. Yeah, before we get into the show today, I do want to point out, podcast, we could do it every year, 5 episodes in 5 days. Coming up tomorrow, you can have our NFC preview with Nada from Up Rocks and everywhere the hell else on the internet. And on Friday, we're rolling out our SummerSlam preview annually. I get together with Rich Fan and Cam Hawkins from over at PW Torch and longtime friend of the show, voice of the dogs of the morning in Athens, Sam Franco. They'll all be on talking SummerSlam. But today, Barso and I are going to talk AFC football. And it's interesting because when I was putting together the schedule, I had these 2 gaps, NFC and AFC. And I knew I wanted to talk to you for one of them, but I also knew that I couldn't be 30 minutes of us just talking about the Falcons and the Packers. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it to us or the listeners. I was like, there's only so much pod audience can take of us just yelling at each other about how much I hate your quarterback.
Yeah, I think there's probably too much volume, and no one would probably listen to it. We can just do that offline.
Yeah, we're doing it offline. I'll say this before we get too far into the AFC. I already broke down the scores of podcast magic. I've already recorded the NFC episode. And, breaking down your team, why don't they just pay that man? Like, I'm not trying to get you on a tangent anywhere, but, come on. You're a fan. You're a guy who cares. Pay the man, right?
I would have thought it would have been a short conversation, right? Get in the room, put up all the comparable contracts, add a few $1 million, put in some structure, and let's be done with it, right? Like I'm with you. I'm not really sure what they're waiting on, and now they're hiding behind kind of the camp and stuff. But I think it gets done. It just feels like it's taken way, way too long, and it's scaring the shit out of me.
Perfectly honest. Well, it's so crazy because even doing over-unders for the NFC teams, the Packers came in, won 7 games last year with limited Aaron Rodgers, which tells you that there's talent on the field. There's some trades in the offseason. Jordy Nelson obviously took his leave. But it feels like the structure's there to strike now. And if you got a strike now team, you pay the quarterback now.
Yeah, you get that off the table, and then you try to go for it this year. They've got about in my opinion, 2 to 3 year window where the Vikings are going to be good for a while, and so they need to win the division now and probably the next couple of years to, really take advantage of what Aaron's got left. So I agree with you. I wish they would have gotten it done already. I hope they get it done quick. But I think they do have the tools. They just got to stay healthy, which is what's super scary about the preseason. They're already losing guys.
Well, let's talk about the AFC. I think it's kind of the consensus now that the AFC is clearly the second best conference. The top's obviously the top with the Patriots and the Steelers. But as a whole, the conference has been kind of down. And we're going to start out west. Start with the Denver Broncos. Speaking of down, you see 5-11 last year, you kind of wince. But then you realize that this team opened 3-1. Like, this is a team that wasn't supposed to be 5-11. They lost 8 straight games in the middle of the season, and they fired their OC after 11 games. Like, it's ridiculous. The defense is falling apart. I know Wade Phillips is with the Rams now, but this seems like it should be more. How is Van Joseph still employed? Right now, they're poised. They're stated right now on the books. 7.5 is the over-under, which I think is an amazing number based on how you feel about the AFC West. Barso, is 7.5 that number that we say we believe in this first-time quarterback, Vance Joseph, or do we say that there's just too many wins?
I think it's too many. I kind of had them penciled in at almost, like the 5-11, 6-10 kind of number, because I think you're right. I mean, the quarterback situation last year was a nightmare, and I would love to believe in Case Keenum, but I'm not convinced that he's a franchise quarterback. And you're right about the defense. Like they got better through the draft, but I'm not really sure that outside of edge rushers, they really got a lot going on. And they got smoked. They got exposed all year last year. And so it's a tough division. Everyone else is getting better. So I have them under.
What's crazy to me, and T'Challa agrees, what's crazy to me is that, so I think it was kind of like the unspoken truth about the Viking season last year was that, yes, Case Keenum was going to get the headlines, but the story was that horrifying, mutilating defense that just abuses people. And for some reason, John Elway continues the trend of athletes who don't necessarily make great execs, and that he's the only one in football who said that the Case Keenum season wasn't an anomaly and we should throw a bunch of money at him. And let's say the Case Keenum thing doesn't work. Now we're looking at Trevor Siemian, who, Barso, like, I'm sorry. And then I just saw a picture of Paxton Lynch. Like, what the hell is happening? Of all the things that should be going right in Denver, I feel like quarterback shouldn't be the place where I'm saying, well, they can't win games even if the defense comes back, because what the hell are they going to do under center?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, if I'm going into camp as a Broncos fan, I'm looking at the depth chart and it's like, wait, this is what we did. This is our solution. I think Vance Joseph's actually under a lot of fire, even though it's early in his kind of tenure there.
It kind of has to be.
Yeah, I could kind of see this being a situation where maybe he even gets bounced, mid-year, or he's definitely one of the biggest coaches that's on the hot seat heading into the season.
I wish I could bet on a team drafting a quarterback in the first round next year, because I just realized that Chad Kelly's on the roster. And that to me just spells like, oh, we're desperate and this fan base is going to probably revolt around week 3, because it's not an easy schedule. It's not going to be a fun schedule. And I don't think it's going to be good for the Broncos faithful. Let's stay obviously out west and head to the Chargers. So this is one of those teams where I had no notes. The LA Chargers, which is still weird to say, they play in, I believe, a shoebox is an appropriate comparison. I've seen bigger high school football stadiums in the state of Georgia, and that's not an exaggeration. They somehow, miraculously, pulled out 9 wins last year. 2 teams in LA is bad for me reading charts. 2 teams, 9 wins last year. The number's 9.5. We're at year, it feels like, I feel like he's having a child a year, so at year 12 with Phillip Rivers, I believe. It's got to stop at some point, right? Because nothing's gotten better. It's one of those things that all of a sudden you look up and, hey, the Chargers have 9 wins. Huh. None of it's impressive. None of it is commanding, but it just seems like they're always there. And like some sort of like much worse example of the Spurs, they're stunning in their consistency, but kind of boring.
They're definitely the team. They're the team that in the last part of the season, you all of a sudden look up and all of a sudden they've won 3 or 4 straight, and then they miss the playoffs by half a game around the last day.
You described the last 5 Chargers seasons.
It feels like that happens every single year. But who knows? I mean, even though the Madden can't get their name right, I think it's one of those things. They may just be a beneficiary of the rest of the division not being that great.
It's so wild, because you're right. They're a beneficiary of being the perennially second best in that division. Whether 2 years ago it was Oakland and Chargers. Last year it was Kansas City and the Chargers. 3 years ago it was Denver and the Chargers. It feels like they've just kind of locked themselves into this 2 place where I know the fans might feel a certain way about it, but I know guys who are getting hit on Sundays and not improving, they've got to ask a lot of questions. And I think it'd be hard to bring a free agent there now because, one, there's no fan base. You've moved the team. You're officially the second LA football team behind the Rams, which I didn't think was possible, but you did it. Congrats. And there's no hope for the future because it's not like they're building for tomorrow. They're once again, year 2018, Phillip Rivers, and we'll see what else happens. And like you said, they're going to come up late in the year, come off some injuries, hey, pick up some wins, and barely miss the playoffs. Let's go now to my favorite story of the NFL season. The Kansas City Chiefs, because they're telling me, they want me to believe that this quarterback they brought in not only is going to be better than Alex Smith was, but add a new element to the game. You got Andy Reid being quoted as saying, I don't worry about interceptions in practice, which is probably a good idea, but I know there's a lot of question marks because this is a team that is built to win now. And if this quarterback gamble doesn't work out, I don't know what they're going to do. Kansas City last year, they came out hot. They won 10 games. They're on the hook for 8.5 this year. I like the 8.5 just because I love that defense and I love the weapons around. It's just that quarterback is a huge question mark for me.
Yeah, I agree. 8.5 is a good number because I would probably say 8 and 8 or 9 and 7. But the Pat Mahomes thing, it still kind of baffles me a little bit. I never thought that they were actually going to move forward and get rid of Alex Smith with only him in the depth chart. But I mean, he's good. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I remember watching him in college. Like he can sling it, he can run, and they've got a lot of weapons. But that is just, you don't want to go into the season with such a big question mark. Right, and he's not going to be. I really want to see him in the first couple of weeks go through his progressions and see if he's going to be any good. Because there's a chance he just tucks it and runs too much, and then they can't score enough points, and then the defense can't bail him out.
And that's the thing is you're going to have to learn very quickly if he's got it or not, and if he doesn't have it, then what? Because this is a team that has the pieces around him, and it has the defense to contend in a weak AFC, particularly in the AFC West. But someone's got to, I feel like someone has to step up and win this division. And I feel like it kind of fell to Kansas City this coming year because, honestly, no one else is poised to do it. Denver's got more questions than they do at quarterback. The Chargers are the Chargers, and we'll get to the Raiders and the fact that John Gruden wants to run the place from 1998 in a second. It's kind of a huge gamble because you look behind him, there's not a whole lot back there. There's Chad Henne and Matt McGloin, but beyond that, like there's no experience on this roster. Like if you're going to say, yeah, Chad Henne's been in the league for a while, I said, and then what? Also, he's been there for a while. Congratulations. So is Ryan Fitzpatrick, and you could talk to Tampa Bay fans how they feel about that. It just doesn't look great for me. It just, the thing is, they're going to win the division because now let's look at what Oakland's done. Oakland, 6 wins last year. They're projected for 8. I think they go under because if you look at 2 years ago, this Oakland team was on the cusp. They made the playoffs. They had a lot of injuries, but they were like a feel-good story about people fighting through it. Now, you decided to bite on the John Grudenism, and I just want to break this down for the listeners who don't care about this kind of stuff, and you shouldn't. But every year, when a job opening would come open, John Gruden's name would get floated, and a number would get floated with his name. And then ESPN would announce they had re-signed John Gruden to get more money to talk about football on television. Finally, I don't know if the Raiders just came over the top or if ESPN blinked. I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden, John Gruden's back as head coach of the NFL. For those of you who don't remember John Gruden as a coach of the NFL, he won a Super Bowl. He won a Super Bowl because he had Tony Dungy's players and the opposing team's playbook. That's not an exaggeration. He was formerly the coach for the Raiders, went to Tampa Bay, played the Raiders in the Super Bowl, and in the beginning of the game, they figured out they had never changed the playbook away from Gruden's play calls. If there's one anomalous Super Bowl in my lifetime, that's one of them, along with the Giants-Ravens. That was a lot of fun, though. This one is an anomaly because one team knew the other team's plays as they were calling them. That is why John Gruden is famous. That is why he's on television. And that's why somehow he's back coaching the Oakland Raiders.
Wasn't that a Brad Johnson Super Bowl?
The Brad Johnson Super Bowl. There were no others. Please believe that.
Kind of like the Joe Flacco Super Bowl.
God, they're still paying for that one. It's crazy. 10 years, $100 million. $100 million. Since he won the title 16 years ago, he went 45 and 51.
It's great. It's crazy what people can forget about, right? I think it's crazy. I mean, that's such an off-market contract for an NFL coach.
You get rid of a popular and successful punter because you didn't like his attitude. You apparently during film, this is a quote from Jared Cook, who was born in 1987. John Gruden was showing team film in camp from 76 where it's grainy so you can barely see the players, so that Gruden said that some of his plays and scheme originate there. You do realize it's 2018, right? This is John Gruden before the Combine this year. I'm trying to throw the game back to 1998. I'm not going to rely on modern technology. I will certainly have some people that are professional that can help me in that regard, but I still think doing things the old-fashioned way is a good way.
He's just going to run the ball 60 times a game.
He says there's a lot of analytical data or however you say that word, that people don't even know how to read it. It's one thing to have the data or data. I'm reading his quote, I promise you. It's another thing to know how to read the damn thing. So I'm not going to rely on GPSs and modern technology. They're voluntarily taking outdated methods to make themselves less competitive. Raiders fans, repeat after me, 4-12.
I had him at exactly 4-12. I mean, you look at the team. I mean, remember how good their offensive line is. That's the only thing, in my opinion, that's elite on their entire team. I don't think Derek Carr's all that great, but I think that they can be formidable. But I'm not convinced that Gruden is the right guy. And I hope I'm wrong because I really like him.
I know he's not the right guy. Khalil Mack is still not in camp.
Khalil Mack is forfeiting $1 million to not be there.
Khalil Mack is so good at football. There are certain guys you watch on film, I literally can't imagine physically having to block that person. Sue's one of them. And Khalil Mack's on that list because he brings such an element. And if you think this Raiders team is garbage with him, wait till you see a couple games without him. They're not going to only pay his fines for him. They're going to give him a great brand new contract. And you could have made this all much more simple by paying the man the money he deserves right now. Okay. So I also wanted, I had this circled on here. What do you want to tell Raiders fans to expect from the incoming end of career Jordy Nelson experience?
You know what? He's so good, and he's so good still. He can't necessarily stretch the field like he did 5 years ago, but he's going to be such a good bailout target. I really think it's a good ad for them because Derek Carr could use a little bit of a spark. They got rid of Crabtree. They got Martavis Bryant now too. So between him and those two and Amari Cooper, I mean, he's got a lot of weapons, right? They're supposed to score a ton of points. And I think Jordy's got a few good years left in him, at least 1 or 2, maybe 2 or 3. But I think it's a good ad.
My Jordy Nelson note just says walking concussion.
That's the thing. I mean, you get to that age, and it's a question mark, right? You get hit, you get one bad hit on the sideline, and that happened to him a couple of years ago. He missed the entire year with an ACL. So, if he stays healthy, he's a good ad.
We'll see. We'll see, Raiders fans. I don't know. I've got a lot of questions for your team. The other team we got a lot of questions for, but I think they may have some answers this year. We're headed to the AFC South and the Houston Texans. And Deshaun Watson not being allowed to start and then being forced to start because your starter was so bad because, honestly, why'd you start Tom Savage? And then getting hurt as soon as we all kind of agree, oh, my God, this guy's going to change the league, is the most Texans thing that's ever happened. Only surpassed by, I want to say this delicately, a former scout team All-American who may or may not have been abusing steroids that result in joint failures at a large level and is probably past his prime, but became some sort of motivational leader for lying about a log cabin. That's the nicest way I can describe J.J. Watt, I think.
That was very eloquently done.
I appreciate it because you remember those guys when we were seniors, the freshmen who'd go super fast on Thursdays and Fridays, and we're like, "Hey man, it's walkthrough."
Oh, I hated those heroes.
This is that kid on steroids. That's J.J. Watt. I just find him immediately insufferable. And while there have been rumors that I'm not pulling this out of thin air, you don't tear your groin repeatedly naturally, generally. You don't. And I personally have no problem if he's using something to enhance his performance. It's the NFL. It's the most brutal thing you can do to your body on a weekly basis. Do what you got to do to survive. But I'm not going to pretend like he's some paragon of virtue and the last real good man trademarked in the NFL. It's ridiculous to me. That being said, this is a Texans team that won 4 games last year. They set the line right now at 8.5. And I got to send that over because while I will admit somehow the AFC South got good and I wasn't paying attention and it's a competitive division now, watching if Deshaun Watson is near where he was, we could look at something really, really special there, particularly in the way they've changed like the hit rules, and the reason like the safety market's being so depressed right now is because they don't know what they're going to call in that field. A guy with the level of talent that he has, not just arm strength, but ability to change defenses with his legs, that's a scary thing to have under center for you.
Yeah, I think the best way to describe him is scary when healthy, all right? And there was a lot of good flashes of greatness last year. So I agree with you. I think they're on the rise. The one thing that I thought was crazy, and I thought this number was smaller, they put 13 starters on injured reserve at some point during the season last year. And so they're playing with 100% backups. And they still, at times, found a way to win, right? So I think if anything, these guys are going to be better off than we may have thought.
Yeah, especially look at what's got added. Tyra Matthew came over from Arizona because he wouldn't take a pay cut, and then takes a 1-year, $7 million contract because, one, again, the market's seeing depressed for defensive players, but two, he wants to prove he can do it. That's awesome. But could you say that maybe NFL owners are silently colluding to drive down safety prices so that a guy like Tyra Matthew has to take a $7 million deal? Or that I'm excited for Ricardo Allen signing for 3 years and 19 in Atlanta? Maybe. I don't know. It's not like it's the first time it's ever happened in the NFL. It's not like it's crazy to think about it happening. Can I talk about something else seriously for a second? You and I we play football long enough. We're football-ish guys. When Bill O'Brien sells you as quarterback whisperer, and he starts Tom Savage to start his season, one of these things can't be true, right?
Yeah, those don't work together. I think the term quarterback whisperer must be loosely used down in Houston, because I remember just laughing when I saw that was actually going to happen.
Tom Savage, man. Let's go to the next team, because this is getting depressing. Speaking of depressing, the Indianapolis Colts, who might see their franchise quarterback take the field this year. Last year, we were told at 3 different times that he'd definitely be taking the field, and of course he didn't. I'm speaking, of course, of Andrew Luck, who is apparently throwing tennis balls now, which is a step in the right direction, I suppose, for a tennis player. The Indianapolis Colts finished with 4 wins last year. The line's at 6.5, and if there's one remnant of this division that's going to be putrid, it's the Colts. The Texans have gotten better. The Jaguars are a world beater with that defense. Hell, the Titans, with a healthy Mariota, have proven to be a playoff team. This Colts squad is abysmal. Because let's just give them the leeway they don't deserve. Let's pretend that Andrew Luck is going to be upright and available for, call it, 10 of 16 games. That's a lot of games. The line got, maybe worse. What's the plan? Because you and I believe, we were taught, if you can't block it, you can't call it. And then you go to Indy what can we call?
Yeah, I mean, they got 1 draft pick right, with Quentin Nelson.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of it hasn't really changed. So, even if he's upright, like you said, it's not going to be for the entire season. If there's any sort of bet to make that he's not starting 16 games, I would do it yesterday. It's just, I just already know that that's not going to be the case. So I think you're right. I think it's the other. The rest of the division, I mean, they're going to lose. They might go 0 for the division, right? Because everyone else got a little bit better.
A very good chance of not winning any division games. That's a real thing. And another reason why they're not going to win division games is because, sadly, they finally got rid of Chuck Pagano. He had to take his leave because he can only survive Andrew Luck for 1 season, not 2. Now we know the math. And let me just say this before we move on to the next coach they hired. The Blank Strong thing, it's dead. It's like Blankgate. We're out. I'm sorry. I'm calling it. Recording this on the 12th of August. It's a wrap. No more Strong. No Chuck Strong. No, none of it. We're done. It's over. Let's think something new. Because the new coach in Indianapolis is Josh McDaniels coming over from the – wait, excuse me. Hold on. Nope. No, they had a press conference scheduled and Josh just didn't show up and went back to the Patriots. That is awkward. Is there a more damning indictment of your franchise than to have a coach not just announce, but have a press conference scheduled and then have that coach be like, nah, I'm good with this assistant money. I'm good. I'm keeping an assistant over here. You guys keep that head job.
I'm envisioning that this all happening while he's in the air from New England to Indy. And he gets a phone call and he goes up to the pilot and says, bro, we gotta flip this thing around.
So the story, as it's always been told, is that he changed his mind pretty much in the air, like you said, because the Patriots gave him a raise and Bill Belichick promised to give him access to the inner workings of the organization. We're going to talk about the Patriots later, but if you want to start a conspiracy theory that they're somehow funded by the Illuminati, this is a great place to start. Frank Reich is now the head coach in Indianapolis. Before preparing for this, did you know that?
Only because of the Josh McDaniels thing, because it had the story had to end somewhere. It just ended in Frank Reich.
It's so crazy. It's insane. It's
Colts.
It's the Colts, man. Like I didn't realize they gave up the most sacks last year. The Colts. And now you're going to tell me how excited you are that maybe, just maybe, Andrew Luck might come back there. You and I we enjoy this shit. Is there any appreciable proof that Andrew Luck's a great quarterback?
I mean, the last time I watched him play, I had a full head of hair. You know what I mean? I mean, it's insane. Yeah, there was some quote after their first preseason game where he was just like, I'm so glad to get out there. I haven't played and it's been 2 years. The guy
when you see the date of last game, you're like, oh my god.
I don't even remember.
It's like he got kidnapped. It's like he got kidnapped.
He may have gotten kidnapped, actually.
Yeah, by an inappropriately diagnosed shoulder condition. Big kidnapping. Let's go now to a team that I never thought I'd ever say nice things about. Honestly, we're here in year probably 2 of them being a real legitimate football team, and I'm not comfortable with it because the Jacksonville Jaguars won 10 games last year. They're slated to win 9. Can we both comfortably take that over?
I think that's an easy over, yeah.
Okay, now let's handle this. What the hell is going on? Because I don't believe in everything needs to always be the same. I believe that, I don't believe in parity, but I do believe that there's a certain strata of NFL teams. And I hate to sound like a certain draconian person, but Jacksonville should know their fucking place. This is ridiculous. I shouldn't have to worry about Jacksonville fucking Jaguars. I shouldn't.
The Jacksonville Jaguars had a 10-point lead in the second half of the AFC Championship game not that long ago. That's all you need to remember.
I'm looking at
Blake Bortles up and down, right and left.
Blake Bortles was solid in the opener. I'm like, no one should ever say that. I don't care if it's true. You just shouldn't say it out loud. You should be publicly flogged and humiliated for saying Blake Bortles is a good quarterback. But here in our 2018, I can't say he's a bad one.
There are definitely worse, right? An NFL franchise extended him this offseason, right? So he's doing something right, even if it's just handing the ball off. But he's doing something right.
And when you're handing the ball to someone like a Leonard Fournette, who you and I both got to see live when LSU played Auburn a couple years ago, it's a special thing because did you know Fournette dropped 17 pounds in the offseason? He's somehow losing weight and getting faster, which should terrify everyone because that's his biggest strength is the fact that he's so big that if he's faster, the second level and third level guys aren't going to be able to tackle him one-on-one. It's just not going to get done.
Right, and the fact that they've still got TJ Yeldon too. I mean, the fact that he doesn't have to carry the ball 35 times a game is even better, right? So he can do 15 to 20 or whatever the number ends up being, and they get a little change of pace, and the offense just keeps going. They got a great offensive line. They've built it for so long that it's actually gotten good.
Who would really think that? What an insurance policy in TJ Yeldon, right? And I guess we'd be remiss if we didn't at least acknowledge possibly the I'd say top 3 defense in the NFL right now. I still got Minnesota at number 1 because they actually terrify me. But this Jacksonville defense, Jalen Hurts, what they've got over there, it's because they come out and they hit you, and then they say throw it, and they take the ball away. They say run it, and you can't. You're right, up 10 points in the AFC title game, and they had a little bit of a meltdown, but not a meltdown to the point where I'm like, oh, this team's definitely going to win fewer games this year. I think they won't sneak up on people as much, but I do think that first game of the season, I think it's Jacksonville versus the Giants. We got the corners versus Odell Beckham. I'm here for that. I'm also here to watch Eli embarrass himself, but that's neither here nor there.
You can see that a lot, right? You can see that. That's more than one Sunday. But no, you're right.
For you, that's a local one because it's always playing in New York.
That's right. Now the corner's great. They signed. I saw they signed DJ Hayden, so he's just going to be the nickel guy, right? And then you've got Miles Jack and Telvin Smith in the middle. Right? Those guys are insane. I mean, those are Clydesdales. That's probably the best linebacking core in the league, even though they lost. Because Leslie's retired, right? So, but yeah, those guys are. But those guys are going to step right in. That's probably the scariest linebacking core in the AFC.
It's really kind of like we always kind of scoff at, we're going to build through the draft, but Jackson was like, hey, it works. Look, we did this. And it happened. It wasn't like one of those slow turnarounds where like, oh, you can see the pieces coming together. This is a very sudden, all in a hurry. Jacksonville's a terrifying football team. And I, for one, am not ready to continue betting on them. I won't bet against them anymore, but I won't bet on them yet. I'm not there mentally. The Titans.
They were in the AFC Championship. I just don't forget that. that actually happened.
Me knowing it intellectually doesn't make it real. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, oh, I know it happened, but I mean, lots of stuff happens. Tennessee Titans, the sources of our very first college football uniforms. We looked ridiculous. Marcus Mariota appears to be back from the injury. He looks healthy, looks good. He had his first action against your team, the Packers. Watching him live, what did you think about this team, even that first little peak of preseason?
I think that it's one of those teams that, like, they changed their coach, but they weren't a bad team that changed their coach. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just the expectations kind of. But I really am a huge fan of Mike Vrabel. So I think that they've only gotten better. They signed. Remember, we were laughing about their offensive line contracts because we should have just played longer. But I think the defense is good enough in this division. I mean, they looked decent against the Packers. Who cares about the preseason? But right. I think that they actually have the foundation in place to hopefully take that next step.
I have a question for you though, because you mentioned you like Mike Vrabel. I think he's a great player, good assistant. Is it interesting to give a team that has real playoff aspirations, really on the cusp, to give them that new rookie head coach? Is that a lot to ask a coach to handle?
It's a lot to handle. Yeah, I mean, he's walking into a lot of expectations, but I think if anything, they had to get better on defense. He's obviously a defensive guy, but even if they take a step back this year, he's got a little bit of a leash. He's got a little bit of time. So I think he's going to do well. He's got the OC he brought in. I remember is the same guy that worked with Jared Goff. I forget his name. He's gonna help. He's gonna help with Mariota. I think they're ready to take the next step, like I said.
Well, they won 9 last year. They're slated to win 8 this year. I think the over is a comfortable pick. But again, like, it's so wild to me. The Vrabel thing's a good hire. I agree with you. I think that he's a defensive-minded coach. For me, that division is just so competitive all of a sudden that I worry about losing a year of development and using a year kind of in prestige to free agencies. But I think you're right. I think this is a squad that's going to find itself doing some big things near the end of the season because I know I'm kind of talking both sides of my face here, but the Vrabel hire is a stronger hire than I think I'm probably giving it credit for. Because you're not asking him to come in here and mold Mariota. You're asking him to come in here and shore up a defense that, you're right, was porous at times last year and then needs to be shored up. So we'll see what happens there. Let's go next to the AFC North, the Cincinnati Bengals, whose main goal in life is to not be the Browns. And they continue to meet that very low benchmark, but we're headed into another year of Marvin Lewis, who cannot seem to get fired. What was the win total last year? Let's look this up really quickly. Cincy won 7 last year.
7-9, yeah.
7. How? The line this year is 6.5. I could be talking the over or the under here because I can barely believe they won 7.
I have them at 7-9.
And that's that's fair because what changed that makes them appreciably better than last year?
No, they're consistently mediocre, right? Remember all the headlines for the Bengals the 2 weeks after the season was that they were going to mutually agree to part ways with Marvin Lewis, and then all of a sudden it just didn't happen, right? So everything that they did was just status quo, and I really don't think they got that much better. So we have no real reason to believe that they're going to be anything different than last year.
The names are back, guys. AJ Green, he's back. Andy Dalton, he's back. The thing is, they're back. Like nothing's really changed. They've got a defense that is competitive at times and not all the time world beaters, but they've got something to believe in, I believe, on defense. It just feels like a lot of treading water. And if your identity is not the Browns, congrats. That's your ceiling. That's what you've done. You did it again. But if you want to be more than that, particularly in this division, you've got to – how is Marvin Lewis still employed? Like, I'm sorry. We're at 0 playoff wins for life right now.
Right, he's over.
He's over. What does he have on these owners? Like, I need to know. I need to get that on my bosses, honestly. It's a level of job security I can't even fathom. It's really kind of remarkable because 7-9 again shouldn't get you a vote of confidence.
Yeah, 7-9 should get you fired.
I mean, in some places it shouldn't, but in Cincinnati with that talent, was looking on the roster, Geno Atkins, AJ Green, like, yeah, you probably should get fired behind it 7-9.
Totally
Speaking
agree.
of people who are somehow still employed, Hugh Jackson is again at the helm of last year's 0-16 Cleveland Browns. They're on the hook right now for 5.5 wins.
There's no chance.
Well, they get to tout for the first time in probably since the resurgence of the Browns. I can tell you that their starting quarterback's an actual viable playoff caliber quarterback because Tyrod Taylor has done it in very recent memory. I think that the Baker Mayfield thing, I think him being the second right now is probably best for him. He's a little bit shorter than I'd like an NFL quarterback to be. I obviously respect what he did in college, but I just worry that he's Super Manziel. Like, I think that he's like it's the thing that if you go back and you take out Johnny Manziel's that one game against Bama, he doesn't win the Heisman and probably has a much quieter career than he had. Baker Mayfield doesn't have that defining moment because he played in the Big 12, because honestly it's the Big 12. But he did have a great show against Georgia. He put up more points than anyone else did against that defense all year. He's proven what he could do early in preseason. We know the element he brings as far as his legs, but you've got to go with Tyrod early, right? You've got to go with the guy who we know is a steady hand.
How long do you think it takes for these guys? Because okay, let's just play out a scenario. They're gonna lose their first couple of games because they're the Browns. So how long do you think it takes before the rumblings start coming? Before they think Tyrod's got to hit the bench?
Let's do it this way. They open home versus Steelers. They're gonna lose that game. They go then to New Orleans. They're gonna lose that game. The Jets could be feisty. They might lose that game, and they're going to Oakland. So you leave September potentially 3-1 or winless. The bye week isn't until November, and then you're home for Baltimore. I don't think you throw them out there against Baltimore. Maybe home versus the Chargers the 14th.
You know it's coming, right?
That's 5 weeks. The hook's coming. Like, just because I like Tyra Taylor. You've heard me on the show. I think he's a good quarterback. The providence of being the quarterback of the fucking Browns with that opening 5 games does not lend itself to you having a lot of job security. It just doesn't.
I agree. I would love to see him. I would love to see him versus Sam Darnold when they play the Jets in whatever that is, week 3 or so. But I think that's probably too early.
Ooh, it's a night game though. It's a Thursday night game. They definitely won't throw him out there on a short week. But you're right. That's going to be an entertaining one because I think the Jets are on the rise. I think the Browns, they mathematically can't be as bad as they were. Like, it's impossible. They can't be as bad as they were. So 5.5 is a good number. I'm taking the under because this is still a franchise that tried to trade for AJ McCarron and had to fall through because they didn't do the paperwork right.
I'm with you. I'm a 4-12, maybe 3-13.
And like, I am a big guy on continuity in a team, and if your coach goes 0-16, I cannot explain why you brought him back.
Did you see the first episode of Hard Knocks?
I am avoiding Hard Knocks this year, but let me know. Inform me.
I watched about 10 minutes of it, and all it does is you can tell that Hugh Jackson just is not. He's not in charge, right? It's not his team, which is just unfortunate to know that they had a chance to make a change and they didn't. I think he's probably out after this year.
You know the one change they did make? Todd Haley's the OC now.
Oh, good.
Like, it's so Browns. They could have had Jimmy Garoppolo, except they suck. They could have had Carson Wentz. They could have Deshaun Watson. And now I'm over here talking myself into Baker Mayfield and making excuses for Tyrod Taylor.
I'm rooting for him. I mean, I would love to see. I'd love to see either of those guys just get on a hot streak and for them to win 6 or 7 games, and all of a sudden the Browns are back. Football's better when the Browns are good. We just haven't seen that in years. So
no one can actually recall this last time. Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's weird to me because kind of like the Chargers, they feel like they do the same thing every year, but except their thing that they do is way more successful. They won 13 games last year. No one remembers it because it didn't feel like 13 wins. It felt like there was infighting in the team. The storylines are more about people not wanting to come to camp and wanting more money than it was about what they were doing on the football field. Hell, Roethlisberger played most of the games. It's a huge win for them. They're on the hook this year for 10.5. I've got them going over, if only because the Browns are going to continue to Brown, the Bengals are going to Bengal, and I think the Ravens are going to struggle until they finally bench Joe Flacco. We'll talk about them next. What do you see out of Pittsburgh? Because is it going to be any appreciably different? Like, this is one of those things where I say how much better the NFC is than the AFC, excepting the Patriots and the Steelers. But because the Steelers are still bitten by that we're terrified of Belichick curse, I kind of think this is the ceiling for this team.
Yeah, I have them at the over. I think they're still one of the top 2 teams in the conference, just because they're so explosive that I don't really see anybody being better than them. We just talked about Todd Haley. I actually think that that's a huge win for Roethlisberger's sort of last part of his career. And, oh, by the way, they drafted a quarterback relatively high in Mason Rudolph. So I think he's going to have a little fire this year. I think he's going to have a good year. Le'Veon Bell, question mark. That's eventually going to work itself out, I would think. But they can score so many points, and their defense is good enough to the point where if you had to pick the 2 teams that are going to have a first-round bye, it's hard to say they're not going to be one of them.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And I think that the Mason Rudolph point you made is a really good one because I don't think Roethlisberger had been complacent. I do think that he had gotten very comfortable telling other people what they should be doing and had no one really pushing him for a while, except for Haley, but that was more a personality thing. I think Mason Rudolph being in camp could be the thing that takes his Steelers team and pushes them over an edge because there's no coasting now if Mason Rudolph's there. They didn't draft Mason Rudolph to watch. They drafted him to take snaps under center eventually, and I know people like to tout the football adage, you're going to teach the next guy your job. You would never teach the next guy to take your job from you. You would never do that. And Roethlisberger won't do that. And I know he's a competitive sumbitch enough that where this push could mean bad things for the rest of the AFC.
I think it's a bad comparison, but it reminds me a little bit of the Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers situation. And I don't know if Mason Rudolph's going to be that good, but I can't imagine. I mean, imagine being in a locker room where the guy that's next to you was drafted to take your job, right? If that doesn't motivate you, that's pretty hard to motivate you then. So yeah, I think it's going to be a big help.
It's nuts, man. It's one of those situations where I think that that was one of the draft picks you used to send a message because we had Roethlisberger like openly flouting the idea of retiring last year. Like, I don't know, we'll see if I come back. Like, they're like, all right, fine. We'll see if we replace your ass. And it looks like it's worked because we haven't heard any grousing out of Steelers camp beyond paying Le'Veon Bell. And I want to say this one time for the podcast, pay Le'Veon Bell. He's terrified. He's terrified.
No, pay him right alongside the Packers paying Aaron Rodgers. Just get it done and stop.
Just get it done. Why let this be the focus of your season? Just pay him. You're gonna need him.
Yeah, that blows my mind, man. It really, really does. And when you try to think about what message you talk about sending a message, what that means to the rest of the team, I don't care what you say, that affects training camp. And it's not good, right? Until he's there, and I know last year we've kind of been through this before, but until he comes in, it's going to be a challenge for them. And last time he did this, he started the year slow, right? Didn't have a great couple of first games. It's a domino effect for sure.
Yeah, and if your running game's not going, it slows down that explosive passing game, which affects how often your defense is on the field. It's not just saying, oh, it's one guy holding out. It's one guy who knows his value. He knows that you guys can accommodate him, and he's saying just do it so we can win as a team. The team gets better the same way Aaron Donald will make that team better when he's on the field. Le'Veon Bell will make this team better when he's on the field.
They had three Pro Bowl offensive linemen last year. Right, you're telling me that they can't just dominate teams early in the season with all those guys returning and him on the field. And oh, by the way, maybe the best receiver in football.
Julio Jones is on line 1 and he's pissed. Anyway, let's go now to Baltimore, who I skipped erroneously because I can't read my charts. The Ravens won 9 games last year, despite having Joe Flacco be quarterback. They're on the hook for 8 this year, and my response to the over-under is dependent entirely on whenever they give the ball to Lamar Jackson. They do it early. I think it could be really good for them. They do it late. I don't know what you're holding on for because people say, oh, you're trying to give away Joe Flacco's job. They took Joe Flacco's job the second they drafted Lamar Jackson. It only became a clock situation.
Absolutely. I love what you said on one of the last pods when you said he's just the quarterback that won the Super Bowl. He's not a Super Bowl quarterback. I hope everybody understands the difference between the two, but I think you're absolutely right. I mean, that guy should be on the field early and often. And the fact that, and I don't want to hear about them just putting in a package with him, putting him in the slot. Don't get him hurt. Just put him under center.
Well, the thing about it is the schedule opens soft, so you could actually do this one of two ways. You could start him now. You could say, Joe, you're going to get your money, obviously, but we're going to go a different direction. The schedule opens home versus Buffalo, headed to Cincinnati, home versus Denver. That's your first 3 games. It's a pretty good landing spot for a rookie. But if you want to go with Flacco, that'll get you 3 probably quick wins. Then they got the war down in Pittsburgh because that's always a war. And then you're going to Cleveland and then headed to Tennessee. I think that out of those first 5 weeks, the only real game, obviously there's a reason you play the games, but the one that you got to have circled is that Pittsburgh game on September 30th. Beyond that, the schedule it balances out, obviously, but it opens up very soft to either let Flacco build something that he can stand on for the season or to say, Lamar Jackson, get your feet wet against Buffalo and Cincinnati.
I think you have to play him at some point in the first 3 games, like earlier than not.
Yeah.
And assuming that they've got a comfortable lead in the fourth quarter of one of those games, and they would otherwise never play a backup quarterback, he's got to go in. You got to get him some reps. But I think you're right that the pivotal game is going to be week 4, right? That's probably going to take the direction for the rest of the season. They'll know where they're at that point. And if it's not in a good direction, I think you're going to see a lot more of him, and he might just take the spot of the consistent guy. We'll see.
It's interesting because I even doing this, I was like, it's a little unfair for the Ravens to have to play the Steelers twice because the Steelers are such a class of the conference. But at the same time, it gives you 2 good barometers. Week 5, and I believe it again in week 10, you get to see exactly where you stand because they don't play New England this year. The only crossover teams from the NFC are New Orleans, who I don't think is going to be very good, Carolina, who presents its own individual challenges, and Atlanta. Those are really the big crossover games. And so Pittsburgh kind of got to be your measuring stick. And I think you're right. That first check-in at week 4 is going to tell them a lot about not just, where they stand, but what the next few weeks are going to bring for this team. Because I think I'm in your boat, man. You've got to open with Flacco, but you've got to be ready to go with Jackson because that's a really special talent.
Yeah, I think it's got to be a quick hook. I mean, you got to let the contract just sort of go by the wayside. Who cares what you paid him? Right? They didn't, like you said, they didn't draft him to just sit there, and it's going to happen eventually. I mean, you don't take the quarterback in the first round unless you're actually moving on from what you have. And so I think it's got to be sooner rather than later. And oh, by the way, Hayden Hurst is probably the coolest guy in the NFL draft. So I can't wait to watch him.
Let's go to the last division. It's the one that the New England Elvises or Patriots or whatever have ruled with an iron fist for the last 18 years, and it makes me fucking sick. The Buffalo Bills made the playoffs last year. If you didn't think the world was on its ear before then, now you do. Because not only did they make the playoffs the first time in what seems like forever, they then immediately gave up their quarterback. Is there a more Bills thing to do? They won 9 games last year. The line's down to 6.5, which is a precipitous drop-off. Barso, is there any way this team wins 7 games with, I believe it'll be Nathan Peterman under center?
It's another – no, first of all, they're not going to win that many games. Second of all, it's the same kind of thing, well, similar kind of thing to the last couple of teams we talked about. It's a matter of win with Josh Allen. And so I'm not – it's not something that you're going to bet on a team when you know for certain that at some point they're going to have to change a quarterback in the middle of the season.
So myself and Felder get kind of lambasted by the Josh Allen truthers last fall, which I'm really excited for football Twitter to be back, guys. Super excited. In that, he's got the big arm, obviously, but there are a lot more questions than answers, I thought, with his accuracy in short, intermediate, and long balls. Am I crazy for still having questions about Josh Allen? Because I've had a lot of Buffalo Bills. I know too many Buffalo Bills fans who are very excited about this kid. I just don't see it still. When my rule of thumb has always been, if I hear about a kid from NFL reporters before college reporters, red flags go up in my head.
Totally agree. I mean, how many times did you watch Josh Allen play in college? Because I watched him play exactly 0 times.
It's 0 times, but then when I did finally watch film on him, I was like, he's fine. Like, I get it. I get the physical. And the argument becomes something that I've decried for years, is that college coaching has turned in from you're not hiring good coaches, you're hiring good recruiters. And so NFL teams have to kind of break bad habits and build them anyway. So I think what NFL camps are saying is that Josh Allen has these physical talents, but he was never really coached properly. And that, of course, the arrogance of the coach says, I'm the one who can fix him and change him. And that's how guys stay in the league forever. Hi, all the McCown brothers. Do you think that's viable here, or is Josh Allen kind of who he is? I watched some snippets from his first preseason game. There were some flashes, but none of it told me that this is a guy who has to start sooner than later, but because of Nathan Peterman and I believe A.J. McCarron, I'm not even entirely sure. But because of Nathan Peterman, basically, you got to say we've got to give him a shot. Yeah, it was A.J. McCarron's the backup. Because of those 2 other guys ahead of him, you've at some point got to put out the first rounder, right?
No, I agree. And you talk about, coming to the NFL and then fixing him there and all this stuff. These guys traded up for him, right? And he's a first round pick. Like, you're not supposed to draft a project at that point in the draft. I think you're right. I think he's got all the physical capabilities. I actually watched a little bit of their first preseason game. He did have a couple of really good throws. He threw an absolute dime in the end zone. But I think that the problem is going to be for them is that, just like anybody else, he's one guy, right? He's one guy and he's a rookie, and he's not necessarily – it's just like Tyrod Taylor last year. Like, they don't have a ton of weapons. They've got LaShawn McCoy and then a bunch of other dudes. So it's not as though it's not as though he's just going to be able to all of a sudden start, averaging 35, 40 points a game because of him. Like, it's just that they don't really have enough around him, I don't think, to be dangerous. So it's going to be a reflection on him at the end of the day.
Let's talk next about the Miami Dolphins. They went 6-10 last year, and someone would say that their season was over the second they signed Jay Cutler out of the announcing booth, which is still one of the dumbest stories of all time.
I'm watching Barry Cavallari, by the way.
Okay, so if one more person brings up this show to me, is it that entertaining? Is he that much of an asshole?
It's just vintage Cutler. It's everything you want him to be doing, he's doing.
But the best part is, living in Atlanta, I meet kids from Nashville who either played with him or knew him at Vandy, and like, this has always been Jay. This is who Jay is. It's not an act. It's not a put on. It's not like the Smoking Jay Cutler meme is literally his life from at least 18 on.
No, it's just him. It's just him. That's why you gotta love it.
It's because it's so authentic. He means it. He means it every time he doesn't give a shit. He means he doesn't give a shit. 6-10 last year. The line this year is 6.5. Brian Tannehill's back, which I think people were excited about. Which means he'll be healthy for about 2 games. You realize that over 2019 and 2020, he's getting $40 million?
Give me the under on that. Right? Like he's fine. Again, he's another fine quarterback. But again, we haven't seen how he's going to be coming off the injury. I'm a big fan of Adam Gase, and I firmly believe that he can actually fix whatever it is that they missed on offense last year, whether it's Tannehill or otherwise. But I just don't know. I think I can't find a reason to believe that this team wins more than 4 or 5 games.
I hope Adam Gase can do it with Brock Osweiler because he's apparently listed as the backup because I have zero faith in Ryan Tannehill staying healthy. Zero. None. Dolphins fans, come at me. At DPalm66. I have no faith in your quarterback staying healthy. Sue's gone. Jarvis Landry's gone, which is nice, I guess. Frank Gore is now here. So if you're surprised to hear Frank Gore's name on an NFL field in 2018, you're not alone. Frank Gore has been on 2 teams since San Francisco, and the fact that that's one of your big offseason signings should tell you everything you need to know about the Dolphins. It's not going to be good.
Yeah, then a 30-plus-year-old running back signing isn't necessarily going to get you that excited.
And it shouldn't. It shouldn't. It's just I'm so worried because I feel like Adam Gase is going to be one of those situations where, like, Frank Gore's done it before and they give him the ball too much. Meanwhile, Isaiah Crowell is, like, actually a good running back. And they drafted Kenyan Drake.
Yeah, so Kenyan Drake actually had a really good year last year in the last part of the season, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if actually Frank Gore is just kind of, it's all headlines.
Well, why is Adam Gase listing them side by side in the depth chart? Maybe to screw with fantasy, I get that. But, like, come on, man.
Yeah.
Like, just give the kid the nod. Let him know he's going to be the guy, and we'll move forward from there. Like, put a little confidence in him.
Yep, especially after you got rid of Jay Ajayi mid-season last year, right? They're obviously taking a view.
I love Jay Ajayi. I think he's a really good back, and damn anyone who says differently. Let's save the Patriots for last so I can be angry last thing today. The Jets. And I hate the guys who do this, but I'm about to be that guy. They might have a quarterback.
You think they have a new quarterback?
The flashes we've seen on the Sam Darnold, like, I don't know, man.
I'm a big Sam Darnold guy. I actually think, again, we've talked about the rookies. I think this guy, if there's any of them, should be stepping in to play day one. I mean, you're not going to actually have Josh McCown play quarterback. Teddy Bridgewater probably can't play quarterback again. So Sam Darnold should be on the field in the first game. Absolutely, full stop.
And the thing is, I'm a Bridgewater guy. I do like Bridgewater. I think Bridgewater is a guy who can come back. I just think that he got put in a situation where even if they start him, they're not going to start McCown. It's all treading water for Sam Darnold. Because I think if Todd Bowles wants to save his job, which I think is what this season is going to be for him, unfortunately, he's going to need to go Darnold early. And because otherwise, what do you really have there? They won 5 games last year. The line is 6. You got nothing to lose. I really do think that this is a situation where Todd Bowles' job is on the line and probably more jobs in the locker room and front office than we're aware of. One thing that I know is not going to leave is Sam Darnold. And if you can strike now with him, you can prove you deserve to be there too.
Yeah, I agree. And funnest fact about the Jets, Terrell Pryor is on the team.
So
never even realized that. But
that's the reason
yesterday.
That's why I'm iffy on Darnold as a quarterback, because when a featured receiver is going to be Terrell Pryor, and everyone will tell me, "Oh, look what he did 2 stops ago." I watched him last year in Washington. Not very impressive.
Right.
And people say, "Oh, take a quarterback and make him a receiver." That's insulting to receivers everywhere, because that job, it's pretty, but it's also very hard.
Oh yeah, Robbie Anderson's good. If they get Quincy Enunwa back and he's what he was a couple of years ago before he got hurt, then it's formidable, which he's going to need as a rookie quarterback. But I'm with you. It's hard. It's another one of those teams here, same divisions, and it's a common theme throughout the AFC. You find a hard time believing that these guys are actually going to put together 4 or 5 games.
And that's what it takes, I think, in the AFC, particularly this year, with only 2 real teams to kind of hang our hats on as the runaway favorites. It's going to be who can string together the right string of games at the right time. And for every time I say, oh, there's a bright spot on this team, there's 3 or 4 areas where I'm like, well, I don't know about the receiving core or the line. Like, hey, Andrew Luck's back, but that line couldn't stop me and you. Hey, the Jets might have a quarterback. Oh my God, look at that receiving core. Like, it's everything feels like give and take, and the only 2 truly complete teams feel like Pittsburgh and the goddamn Patriots. And I'll be honest, I'm very upset that the Patriots are going to be good again, blah, blah, blah. I'll be very despondent. But first I'm going to party because I've taken it upon myself, I don't know where you stand, to believe every story I'm hearing out of Boston. I'm all in on every conspiracy theory. Belichick's going to fight Bob Kraft in a kumite, whatever you want to do. Tom Brady is transitioned his brain into a cyborg so he lives forever. Whatever news is coming out of New England, right, wrong, or indifferent, I'm 100% in on. This is a team that allegedly would not take the deal for Garoppolo to Cleveland because, quote unquote, Belichick just hates Cleveland and took way less from him to go to San Francisco. I don't know how true it is, but I know it's entertaining for me. I love the idea of this team breaking down. I love PED suspensions and Tom Brady not answering questions about his doctor who claims he can cure cancer. I love it all. I love every bit of it. I love Gronkowski being sneaky smarter than all of us thought and recognizing that, he can't play this game forever. I love the fact that they won 13 games last year and the line's down to 11, and I'm still going to take the stupid over because they're the stupid Patriots.
You have to take the over. There's no reason why they're not going to win 12, 12, 13
It's the Popovich Spurs. Bet against them if you want to. I wouldn't do it. It's a great way to lose money. I just don't get it. At a certain point, it has to stop. At a certain point, you can't keep losing receivers and bringing in the other white receivers, Julian Edelman. Bomani Jones is a great comment on this. Like, maybe we all think a certain way about what the Patriots do because we have preconceptions about wide receivers, and maybe Bill Belichick just found a market inefficiency. Like I don't get it. Doesn't make any sense to me. But Julian Edelman's a Patriot because that makes all the sense in the world.
Oh, I hate the Patriots so much.
And I'm doing this tomorrow a lot, where I celebrate the Eagles for finally vanquishing and hopefully putting cracks in their armor. But let's be real, none of us really think that they're gone.
No, they're definitely not gone. I would say if they're, and I'm going to be wrong about this because we're going to watch them win the Super Bowl, but if there was ever an off season that you started looking at it saying, okay, this may be the beginning of the end-ish, I would say it was this offseason, right? There's too much stuff coming out of their franchise and the training camp and everything where it's almost, you never hear anything about the Patriots, and we've heard a lot. So if there was ever a reason to believe that somebody else might win eventually, it's probably now. But you can't bet against this team. And whatever didn't they draft 2 Georgia Bulldogs in the first and second round? So you got to kind of be a fan.
Let's do this. And I've said this on all the college shows last year. I said it on the big Power 5 preview this year. If you were to tell me that Sony Michel and Saquon Barkley are both available and you're going to take Saquon Barkley, who peeled off a 40-yard run in his first touch as a Giant, but then finished with 5 carries for 54 yards, I would tell you that that's what he does. It's one big run and then a bunch of nothing. And Sony Michel is a more complete back, and you gave him to Bill Belichick. You just gave him to Bill Belichick. So,
the cheat code.
Did no one watch the last 5 games of Georgia's college football season? Sony Michel we were able to go from Nick Chubb to Sony Michel because Sony Michel brought the outside run, but then all of a sudden he started bringing that inside hit too, and Nick Chubb was like, well, that's what I used to do. What do you need me for now? Sony Michel carried Georgia.
He's going to be good. He's going to be good. And,
it's not that he's going to be good. Like Isaiah McKenzie ran back a punt return for a touchdown last night. You got to realize that when they had all these running backs at Georgia, it was literally an embarrassment of riches. And Sony Michel is like for real deal, special, next level, Todd Gurley type running back. Like it's unfair that you gave, and he can catch. He can catch, Barso. Like that's what kills me. You gave Tom Brady that.
Yep, and you gave him Jeremy Hill.
This has been a fun podcast.
I actually think the Steelers, and this is probably where we're going next, I actually think the Steelers are a better team. And I hope I'm right, but again, you can't bet against Tom Brady.
That's where I'm at too, man. I do think on paper, I'm more impressed with the talent on the Steelers side of the ball. But like I said when we covered them, they've got that curse where they just can't seem to see past the Patriots. That makes you say, well, what's the point in picking against the Pats? The AFC is down the middle. The Steelers are going to do what they do, but at the end of the day, and I hate saying, I can't believe I just said that, who beats the Patriots? The answer remains no one. And yeah, it's true. Like, if I was a betting man, which I am, I'd put money on the Patriots because I can't see myself betting against Tom Brady, though even if I bet on them, I would obviously be cheering against them. Barso, man, thank you for coming on. Always a pleasure. Columbia University alumni. Soon to be Columbia Football Hall of Famer. I'm just putting that in the ether. I want to be the first one to say it so that I can heckle you at your acceptance speech. And soon to be married person. How's are you about ready?
Sure. Yeah. Ready as I'll ever be.
That was the rightest answer ever.
Like we were saying, we're just recovered from the bachelor party, so I guess the next party's got to happen.
One more party. I'm just give you this one. Someone married almost a year. Yes, dear is a great one. It's just a winner every time. Just that's the one I lean on, and that's my gift to you right now. And obviously, I'm drinking as much of your booze as possible at your actual wedding. Thank you for coming on.
Duly noted.
Podcast Week Rebels on. Make sure you tune in tomorrow for our NFC preview with Natalie Described from Up Rocks. That was your show. This is your outro. See you guys tomorrow.
Lord,